A billionaire's bet turns into love when his bride reveals her secret asterisk. The wager and the contract. The autumn rain drummed against the windows of the exclusive Meridian Club as Vincent Ashford surveyed the opulent lounge from his leather armchair. At 32, he commanded a real estate empire worth billions. Yet tonight, he felt the familiar emptiness that no amount of success could fill. The betrayal by his former fiancée, Valentina Sterling, 3 years ago had left him cynical about love, viewing relationships as nothing more than business transactions. Across from him, his childhood friend and business partner, Julian Cross, swirled his brandy with an amused expression. The ambient lighting cast shadows across Julian's angular features as he observed the bustling crowd of Manhattan's elite socialites. "You know, Vincent, you've become insufferably serious since Valentina's betrayal," Julian remarked, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Perhaps it's time you rediscovered what it means to feel alive." Vincent's jaw tightened at the mention of his ex-fiancée. Valentina had used their engagement to gain access to his business secrets, ultimately attempting to destroy his company from within. The experience had taught him that love was a luxury he could no longer afford. "I'm perfectly content with my current situation," Vincent replied coldly, his fingers drumming against the crystal tumbler. "Emotions complicate business, and I've built everything I have on logic and calculation." Julian's laugh echoed through the private alcove. "Always the pragmatist. But tell me, dear friend, what would it take for you to believe in the possibility of genuine connection again?" Before Vincent could respond, a commotion near the club's entrance caught their attention. A young woman with cascading auburn hair burst through the mahogany doors, her emerald evening gown clinging to her curves as she moved with feline grace. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold rain. Her sapphire eyes sparkled with defiant energy. Serafina Cross, Julian's younger sister, had arrived fashionably late once again. The tabloids loved to chronicle her escapades: midnight races through Central Park in her Ferrari, extravagant shopping sprees that could fund small countries, and a revolving door of suitors who never seemed to hold her attention for long. "Speak of the devil," Julian murmured, watching his sister navigate the crowded room. "My dear Serafina continues to be the bane of high society's expectations." Vincent observed the young woman with clinical interest. At 26, Serafina had earned a reputation as Manhattan's most notorious party girl. Her father, Theodore Cross, had spent millions trying to control her wild behavior. Yet she remained beautifully, destructively free. "She's quite the handful," Vincent commented, noting how every eye in the room followed her movement. Despite her rebellious nature, there was something magnetic about Serafina that drew people to her like moths to flame. Julian's expression shifted, becoming more calculating. "You know, Vincent, I've been thinking about our earlier conversation. What if I proposed a little wager?" Vincent raised an eyebrow, his business instincts immediately alert. "I'm listening." Serafina has been driving our family to distraction with her antics. Father threatens daily to cut off her inheritance unless she settles down and marries. Respectably, Julian paused for dramatic effect. "I bet you couldn't transform her into the perfect society wife within 6 months?" The challenge hung in the air between them like an unspoken dare. Vincent studied Serafina as she laughed at something a young entrepreneur whispered in her ear. Her laughter was genuine, guarded in a way that seemed foreign to the calculated world they inhabited. "And what exactly are the terms of this wager?" Vincent asked, his tone carefully neutral. Julian's smile widened. "If you succeed in taming the untamable Serafina Cross, I'll transfer my shares in the Brooklyn Heights development project to you." "That's a $50 million value." Vincent's breath caught. The Brooklyn Heights project was Julian's most prized investment, and those shares would give Vincent controlling interest in one of the most lucrative developments on the East Coast. "And if I fail?" Vincent inquired, though part of him was already calculating the possibilities. "Then you transfer your Miami waterfront properties to me." "Fair trade, wouldn't you say?" Vincent considered the proposal carefully. Serafina represented everything he typically avoided: chaos, unpredictability, raw emotion. Yet something about the challenge intrigued him. Perhaps it was the prospect of proving that even the most untamed spirit could be molded through patience and strategy. "Deal," Vincent said finally, extending his hand. But I have one condition. This arrangement must benefit her as well. No woman should be treated as merely a prize to be won. Julian clasped his hand firmly. Agreed. Though I suspect you'll find Serafina more complex than you anticipate, as if summoned by their conversation. Serafina appeared at their table, her presence immediately electrifying the atmosphere. Up close, Vincent could see the intelligence behind her rebellious facade, the careful way she assessed both men before speaking. Brother dear, I see you're conspiring again, she said, her voice carrying a slight rasp that Vincent found unexpectedly alluring. Should I be concerned about whatever scheme you're hatching? Julian stood gracefully, kissing his sister's cheek. Serafina, I'd like you to meet Vincent Ashford. Vincent, my sister Serafina. Vincent rose, extending his hand with practiced charm. When Seraphine's fingers touched his, he felt an unexpected jolt of electricity that he quickly suppressed. Her skin was soft, but her grip was firm, suggesting strength beneath her delicate appearance. Mr. Ashford, she said, her eyes meeting his with bold directness. I've heard quite a lot about your business empire. They say you can turn anything into gold, with just a touch. I prefer to think of it as recognizing potential where others see only chaos. It's, Vincent replied smoothly, holding her gaze. Sometimes the most valuable treasures are hidden beneath the most unexpected surfaces. Seraphine's lips curved into a knowing smile. How poetic. And what potential do you see in me, Mr. Ashford? The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither fully understood yet. Vincent found himself studying her face, noting the way her eyes held secrets, the slight tension in her shoulders that suggested she was not as carefree as she appeared. I see a woman who's tired of playing the role others expect of her, he said quietly. Someone who might benefit from a different kind of arrangement. Julian cleared his throat, breaking the spell that had settled over the pair. Actually, Serafina, Vincent has made an interesting proposal. Why don't you hear him out? Over the next hour, Vincent carefully outlined his proposition. A marriage of convenience that would last 6 months, providing Serafina with protection from her father's ultimatums, while allowing Vincent to demonstrate that even the most unconventional woman could adapt to society's expectations. Serafina listened with growing interest, her quick mind immediately grasping the advantages such an arrangement could offer. Her father had been pressuring her to marry his business partner's son, a man twice her age, with wandering hands and cruel eyes. Vincent's proposal offered an escape route she hadn't dared to hope for. So you're suggesting a business partnership disguised as a marriage? She summarized, swirling the wine she'd ordered during their negotiation. I play the reformed socialite. You get to prove your theory about human nature, and we both get what we want. Precisely, Vincent confirmed. A mutually beneficial arrangement with clearly defined terms and expectations. Serafina studied his face carefully, searching for any sign of deception or hidden agenda. What she saw was a man as guarded as herself, someone who had been hurt and had built walls to prevent future pain. In that moment, she recognized a kindred spirit. I have one condition, she said finally. This marriage remains strictly professional. No expectations of intimacy or emotional attachment. We maintain separate bedrooms and our own social lives within reason. Vincent nodded, though something in his chest tightened at her words. Agreed, shall we discuss the finer details? They spent the remaining evening negotiating terms with the precision of seasoned business partners. Living arrangements, public appearances, financial considerations, every aspect of their temporary union was carefully outlined and agreed upon as they prepared to leave the club. Serafina turned to Vincent with an expression that was part challenge, part curiosity. Tell me something, Mr. Ashford. What makes you so certain you can change me? Vincent paused, considering his answer carefully. I don't want to change you, Miss Cross. I simply want to discover who you really are beneath all the noise. The wedding took place 6 weeks later at the prestigious St. Patrick's Cathedral. With 500 of New York's most influential families in attendance, Serafina looked breathtaking in a custom Vera Wang gown that transformed her wild beauty into something elegantly refined. though her eyes still held their characteristic spark of rebellion as they exchanged vows that felt surprisingly meaningful. Despite their contractual nature, Vincent found himself wondering if he had underestimated the challenge ahead. Serafina was proving to be far more complex than he had anticipated, and something told him that their arrangement would test them both in ways they never expected. Secrets revealed and true love found. The first month of their marriage passed in a careful dance of polite distance and growing curiosity. Vincent's penthouse apartment became their shared stage, where they performed the roles of newlyweds for the staff and occasional visitors while maintaining their emotional barriers in private. Serafina adapted to her new environment with surprising grace, though Vincent noticed she often disappeared for hours without explanation. Her mysterious absences intrigued him more than he cared to admit, especially when he began discovering small signs of her hidden nature. One evening, Vincent returned home early from a business dinner to find Serafina in the kitchen, quietly preparing care packages filled with gourmet food from their fully stocked pantry. She worked with focused intensity, her usual playful demeanor replaced by something deeper and more purposeful. "Planning a midnight feast?" he asked softly, not wanting to startle her. Serafina looked up, her cheeks flushing slightly at being caught in her clandestine activity. "Something like that," she replied evasively, continuing to pack the containers with precise care. Vincent moved closer, studying the contents of the packages. Expensive delicacies, warm clothing, personal hygiene items, everything arranged with thoughtful consideration. "These aren't for a party, are they?" he observed, his voice gentle with newfound understanding. Seraphine's hands stilled, and for a moment, Vincent saw past her carefully constructed facade to the vulnerable woman beneath. "There's a homeless shelter downtown where I volunteer," she admitted quietly. "I've been going there for 3 years, but I prefer to keep it private." The revelation shifted something fundamental in Vincent's perception of his wife. This wasn't the reckless socialite the tabloids portrayed, but a woman with a deep sense of compassion who chose to help others in secret rather than seek public recognition for her charity. "Why hide it?" he asked, genuine curiosity coloring his tone. Serafina shrugged, returning to her packing with renewed vigor. "Because the moment people know about it, it becomes about me instead of about them. They need help, not publicity stunts." That night, Vincent found himself unable to sleep, turning over this new piece of information about Serafina. She was revealing herself to be a puzzle he genuinely wanted to solve, rather than simply a challenge to overcome. Their relationship began shifting in subtle ways. Conversations over breakfast became less formal, more genuine. Vincent found himself sharing stories about his childhood, his dreams of building something lasting and meaningful. Serafina, in turn, revealed glimpses of the loneliness that had driven her rebellious behavior, a desperate attempt to feel something real in a world of artificial expectations. The transformation might have continued naturally if not for the sudden return of Valentina Sterling. Vincent was working late in his home office when Serafina knocked on the door, her expression troubled. She entered carrying a manila envelope, her usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. "This was delivered by courier an hour ago," she said, placing the envelope on his desk. "It's addressed to both of us." Vincent opened the envelope with growing dread, his face darkening as he examined the contents. Professional photographs showed him having lunch with Valentina at an upscale restaurant, their body language appearing intimate to anyone who didn't know the truth of their conversation. "She's trying to blackmail us," Vincent said grimly, setting the photos aside. "Valentina wants me to leave you and return to her, threatening to destroy both our reputations if I refuse." Serafina studied the photographs with clinical detachment, though Vincent noticed the slight tremor in her hands. "Are you considering her offer?" she asked quietly. The question hit Vincent like a physical blow. Somewhere during their months together, Serafina had become far more important to him than their business arrangement should have allowed. The thought of losing her created an ache in his chest that he couldn't rationalize away. "No," he said firmly, reaching for her hand. "Whatever Valentina threatens, we'll face it together." But Valentina's machinations were more dangerous than simple blackmail. She had spent months undermining Vincent's business relationships, spreading rumors about his marriage being a sham and questioning his judgment among key investors. The Brooklyn Heights project, Ironically, the same development Julian had wagered was now in jeopardy due to nervous backers pulling their support. Vincent worked 18-hour days trying to save his company, stress taking a visible toll on his health and their relationship. Serafina watched helplessly as the man she had grown to care for pushed himself to the breaking point. His old walls rebuilding themselves as he retreated into isolation. It was during this crisis that Serafina made a decision that would change everything. Her mother had died when she was 16, leaving her a substantial inheritance that Serafina had never touched. The money sat in a trust fund, earning interest for over a decade, while she lived off her father's allowance. But watching Vincent struggle to save everything he had built, she realized she finally had a worthy purpose for her mother's gift. Working through her personal attorney, Serafina quietly arranged for the full amount of her inheritance, nearly $100 million, to be invested in Vincent's company as an anonymous contribution from a Swiss investment firm. The influx of capital not only saved the Brooklyn Heights project, but positioned Vincent's company for unprecedented expansion. Vincent was in a board meeting when his CFO delivered the news about their mysterious benefactor. Relief flooded through him as he realized his company was not only saved, but stronger than ever. Yet questions nagged at him about the identity of their anonymous savior. That evening, he returned home to find Serafina waiting for him with an expression of quiet satisfaction. She had prepared his favorite meal and opened a bottle of champagne, her entire demeanor suggesting she was celebrating something significant. "Congratulations on saving your company," she said, raising her glass in a toast. "I heard the good news reached you during the board meeting." Vincent studied her carefully, noting the way she avoided his eyes and the slight flush of her cheeks. His business instincts, honed by years of complex negotiations, detected something more than casual interest in his company's fortunes. "Serafina," he said slowly, setting down his champagne untouched. "Do you know something about our anonymous investor?" For a moment she maintained her facade, but under Vincent's steady gaze, her resolve crumbled. "I used my inheritance," she admitted quietly. "Every penny my mother left me went to saving your company." The revelation hit Vincent like a tsunami of emotion. This woman, who he had married as part of a wager, who was supposed to be nothing more than a temporary arrangement, had sacrificed everything to protect him and his life's work. "Why?" he whispered, his voice thick with disbelief and something deeper. Seraphine's eyes filled with tears she had been holding back for weeks. "Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about our arrangement. You became the most important person in my life, and I couldn't watch you lose everything without trying to help." Vincent closed the distance between them in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms with desperate intensity. "Serafina, what have you done? That was your security, your independence. You are my security now," she said simply, her hands framing his face. "I love you, Vincent. I think I have for months, but I was too afraid to admit it." The words he had never expected to hear again, never wanted to risk feeling, crashed over him with overwhelming force. Vincent realized that sometime during their months together, his cold, calculated heart had awakened to love this extraordinary woman who had just sacrificed everything for him. "I love you too," he whispered against her hair. "God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me." Their first kiss as real lovers was tender and desperate, filled with months of suppressed emotion and the recognition that they had both been fighting a battle they were destined to lose from the beginning. But their happiness was short-lived. Valentina, enraged by the failure of her financial warfare, decided to escalate her attacks to physical danger. She arranged for Serafina to receive threatening messages, followed by increasingly bold attempts at intimidation. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening, when Seraphine's car was forced off the road by a drunk driver who later disappeared without a trace. The accident left her with a concussion and several broken ribs, but alive only because of her quick reflexes and the car's safety features. Vincent spent 3 days at her bedside in the hospital, his usual composure completely shattered by the sight of the woman he loved, lying pale and injured. It was during those long hours of waiting for her to fully recover that he realized how completely she had transformed his life. When Serafina finally woke up fully conscious, her first words were, "Did you figure out it was Valentina?" Vincent's investigation had indeed revealed Valentina's involvement in orchestrating the accident, along with her other attempts at sabotage. With the help of his legal team and private investigators, he had gathered enough evidence to have her arrested for assault and conspiracy charges. "She won't be able to hurt you again," he promised, kissing Seraphine's forehead gently. "But I have something more important to discuss with you." Despite her injuries, Serafina managed to smile. "If you're about to propose to me properly this time, the answer is yes." Vincent laughed through his tears. Pulling out a simple but elegant engagement ring he had purchased the day after her accident, Serafina cross. "Will you marry me again? Not for business, not for convenience, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "Yes," she whispered, her own tears flowing freely. 1,000 times yes. Their second wedding 6 months later was a small, intimate ceremony held in the garden of Vincent's estate. Only their closest friends and family attended, but the love and joy radiating from the couple was so powerful that even the most cynical guests found themselves believing in true love again. As they danced their first dance as genuinely married partners, Vincent whispered in Seraphine's ear, "Do you know what the most valuable lesson you taught me was?" "What?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "That the best investments are the ones you make with your heart, not your head." Serafina laughed, the sound like music in the evening air. "And you taught me that sometimes the most unexpected partnerships become the most beautiful love stories." Their story became legendary in New York social circles, not as a cautionary tale about the dangers of wagering on love, but as proof that true connection can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances when two people are brave enough to let down their guards and trust each other completely. Julian, who had originally proposed the bet that brought them together, gave the toast at their reception to Vincent and Serafina, who proved that sometimes the best way to win a wager is to lose your heart in the process. Years later, as they watched their own children play in the same garden where they had pledged their love, Vincent and Serafina would remember that autumn night at the Meridian Club as the moment their real lives began. Not with a bet, but with the courage to believe in love again